is also one of our best friends across the planet, I think. And so, yeah. And so we also have to acknowledge his hospitality here. And so thank you very much. Let me know when we can start.
Honor for me. Okay. I switch off my camera, and when you want, you can start to talk. Okay, Serenella or Tiziano. Okay. Ciao.
Grazie. Ciao.
So I welcome everybody who is listening to us today, and it's really a big honor, but most of all, it's a joy. I'm overjoyed to be in such a good company with some of my favorite poets. But this doesn't matter much because my taste here doesn't matter at all. What matters are the words and the silences as well, the ideas, the roots, and the hope that they are going to deliver to us. And so therefore I welcome here Anne Fisher-Wirth from Mississippi, Tiziano Fratus from Italy and Bergamo in particular, and Juan Carlos Galeano, who is a Colombian poet connected from Florida, Tallahassee. I'm Serenella Iovino. I live in Chapel Hill, where I teach environmental humanities and Italian studies at the University of North Carolina. And it is really very important to put together hope and nature, hope and roots, hope and silence, because sometimes too many words are uttered only to say nothing. So now every word which we will say will count. And first of all, let me introduce to you our poets. So our first poet is Anne. Everybody agrees that Anne deserves our special welcome since she's a beacon, and she has led us through a world made of silences and voices, of images that come together and connect with the intimacy of the poet. So Anne Fisher-Wirth is one of those poets for whom phenomenology means also this meeting with the poet's intimacy. These two words are so strictly connected, and you will hear her while she recites her poems, and you will see how the outside and the inside connects in this oikos, which is the self of the poet, which is a very discrete self, a self that dissolves into things, but nevertheless stays as a trace and as a very, very interesting voice. Our second poet, Tiziano Fratus, is self-defined a dendrosopher and a tree seeker. What is a dendrosopher? A dendrosopher is someone who derives his wisdom from trees, and he's also a tree seeker. And so for a very easy syllogism, we can say that he looks for wisdom into trees, and trees are his companions, his travel companions. And in fact, he walks with the roots of the trees that he seeks. And this also materializes into a splendid dimension of meditation, because Tiziano is also, let's say, a modern mystic, is someone who really is in a conversation, in an underground conversation with the reality that he grasps in his poems, and to which he tries to give form also visually in his poems. I don't want to add much, but really Tiziano is someone who deals with this silent matter that nevertheless has so many stories to tell, the matter of the trees, of the forests, of the living creatures that really make the life of a forest. And speaking about life, and speaking about living creatures, and speaking about stories, Juan Carlos Galeano is certainly someone who has enlivened so much the non-human, of the Amazon, the non-human of also of rivers, of the rainforest. And he has created in his poems these cosmovisions that are nevertheless forms of a matter, of a materiality that is so eloquent, that speaks of a sort of an archetypical past that lives again every time a girl bathes into a river, every time that a pink dolphin tries to seduce the women of the Amazon forest, and Juan Carlos is able to see the stories and the transformations of matter into the objects of our daily life, and you will also experience this in the wonderful poems that he will give us. So we have here 3 poets that live respectively in Mississippi, in Italy, and in Florida from Colombia. We have poets that have interlaced words, geographies, because nobody of them is really now in the place where they were born. They have traveled a lot, and with them also their roots have traveled a lot. So I really, first of all, welcome our fantastic poets here, and I would like to invite them to give us hope by talking to us about their roots and their routes. So roots and routes. So progressions of ideas, of words, of eloquent matter. So welcome Tiziano and Juan Carlos. Now, please, I would like to deliver the word to, let's say, Anne.
Thank you so much. That was a beautiful introduction. I'll just say a little bit about my life. I was born right after World War II. The fact that my father survived 3.5 years in the South Pacific means that I came to exist. And I, as an Army brat, moved all over the world when I was little. So I think that was important for me. My roots are kind of in a lot of different places, but mostly in the incredible love that I experienced from my family. I lived in Pennsylvania, Japan, Germany, and finally California. So I consider myself sort of half a Northern Californian, definitely by voting history, a Berkeley Californian, and half by now a Southerner, because I've lived in the South for, oh gosh, pretty close to 40 years. I've taught school for many, many decades, and I still love it. I teach at the University of Mississippi. I'm well past retirement age, but I just can't bear the thought of retiring. So I've adapted to Zoom, and it's going pretty well. I have also practiced yoga for about 45 years, and I can't wait to get back to it once my hip settles into its new replaced position. And that's been super important for me as a sense of grounding, a sense of rooting, a sense of, beauty and stillness in my life. So I started writing poetry. Well, I wrote poetry a lot when I was a kid, as all kids do, a boyfriend, existential anguish, whatever. And then I didn't write for a long time. And then I wrote poetry when I was supposed to be writing my dissertation, which also happens a lot. It's like anything but write a dissertation. And then I stopped again for a lot of years. And then I started again. My first book was published when I was in my 50s, which is late. My first book of poetry. I'd been writing academic literary criticism. Since then, there have been 6 books, and I'm trying to figure out how to put together a new one. So that I have 5 kids. I have a wonderful husband, 6 grandchildren. The youngest is 3, the oldest is 15. And I absolutely cannot wait to get immunized and be able to see them again, because it's been a year and it's been a long time, Yeah, so I'd like to read to you 3 poems by other people, short poems. And these are poems that are really touchstones for me because they are so radiantly grounded in something deeper than our ordinary concerns. The first one is by the incredible poet Ws Merwin, who died almost 2 years ago. And this is kind of a late poem. If you ever want to watch a wonderful documentary about Merwin, the last line of this poem is the title of the documentary. So the poem is called Rain Light. All day the stars watch from long ago. My mother said, I am going now. When you are alone, you will be all right. Whether or not you know, you will know. Look at the old house in the dawn rain. All the flowers are forms of water. The sun reminds them through a white cloud, touches the patchwork spread on the hill. the washed colors of the afterlife that lived there long before you were born. See how they wake without a question, even though the whole world is burning. And the second poem is by the equally great African-American poet Lucille Clifton, who died almost 10 years ago. And this is just a little poem called Blessing the Boats. She lived in Maryland and she taught at St. Mary's. So this is Blessing the Boats, and in parentheses, at St. Mary's. May the tide that is entering even now the lip of our understanding carry you out beyond the face of fear. May you kiss the wind, then turn from it, certain that it will love your back. May you open your eyes to water, water waving forever. And may you, in your innocence, sail from this to that. I love that poem, and I love Lucille Clifton's poetry. I had the great honor of knowing her and seeing her several times, so she's just super special in my life. So I wrote my dissertation on William Carlos Williams, and a great American poet. And the reason that I wrote my dissertation on him is that when I was a teenager, I was in City Lights bookstore one day in San Francisco, California. I picked up a book just at random of Williams' last book, Pictures from Bruegel. And on the back, there was a little blurb by W.H. Auden that referred to Asphodel, That Greeny Flower, as, quote, one of the great love poems in the language. So I knew I had to, read one of the great love poems in the language. At first, I was kind of like, what? What is this? It's a long poem written to his wife. With him, he had had a pretty rocky relationship for a long time. But it's also a kind of coming to terms. He already suffered heart attacks and many strokes. And so this poem is written in a kind of grace period when he knew that he could die at any moment. And I'm just going to read you a few lines from it. So asphodel is the flower that grows in Greek mythology in the afterlife. Of asphodel, that greeny flower, I come, my sweet, to sing to you. My heart rouses, thinking to bring you news of something that concerns you and concerns many men. Look at what passes for the new. You will not find it there, but in despised poems. It is difficult to get the news from poems, yet men die miserably every day for lack of what is found there. Hear me out, for I too am concerned, and every man who wants to die at peace in his bed besides. So that's just a tiny snippet from a 30-page long poem, which I would recommend to all of you. It's gorgeous. It's just really beautiful. Now I would like to read you 3 of my poems, and 2 of them, the first 2, come from a series that I was working on since the pandemic started. So they just have the title of the day on which I wrote them, the day starting, with seclusion. I live with my husband, and we've really had a pretty isolated life for the last year. During the spring, I spent a lot of time sitting on my front porch, just looking at what was blooming. And for this first poem, which is called Day 59, I will just say, first of all, I mentioned Lawrence, that's D.H. Lawrence, and I quote something from his novel, Women in Love. And then I mentioned also Magnolia Grove. Thich Nhat Hanh was a great Zen Buddhist peace activist, and he founded, first of all, a monastery at Plum Village in the south of France after he was kicked out of Vietnam because he wanted to help make peace during the war. And then after decades, a lot of Vietnamese had settled in the Mississippi Delta after the Vietnam War. And they wrote to him and they said, we would like to create a Sangha here. And he said, if you buy land and build some buildings, I will send you some monks and nuns. So of all things, in the middle of the Bible Belt, in the middle of Trump country, we have a monastery called Magnolia Grove, and it's about 35 minutes from my house. I've gone there often, and it's really beautiful. So I mentioned that monastery in the last half of the poem. Day 59. See how quickly it has changed. Without people, the sky is clean again, and all day long, birds clamor and music. I'm on my deck in my underwear, starved for sunlight. A woodpecker drills at a telephone pole, and two cardinals dive bomb each other through the privet. A world empty of people, just uninterrupted grass, Lawrence wrote 100 years ago, and a hare sitting up, ready to bound, alert and quivering. Nowhere to go, nothing to do. The monks and nuns sing, standing in a circle beneath the trees at Magnolia Grove, Thich Nhat Hanh's monastery in Mississippi. And today I'd like to sit with Sister Boy and Sister Peace, eat vegetables and tofu, then wash my bowl in the series of pans, dirty water, soapy water, rinse water, clear, clear like this sky, like the breeze in which the daylight swims. A robin flies to the maple tree. Day 32. A young stag at dusk, white tail flicking, eating flowers heaped on a raw grave, raises his head to watch us before he vanishes slowly into the trees. Outside the kitchen window, my peace roses rise on arching stems like moons in a lead white sky. All year earth holds them. I ignore them. Night thickens among the branches of ginkgo, maple, willow oak, cherry, redbud, and the thicket of bamboo that surround this wooden house. Sometimes I am afraid. At 3, I knelt on the back seat of my mother's car, and looking out the window, I said, there's so much to see and so little time to see it, or so I've been told. It's like that now, watching the leaves. Bread rises in the oven. May the stag sink back into the forest. May the petals drop on the grass. Whoever you are, may you be at peace in this great silence where only the birds speak. And then I'll finish with a poem that I wrote when one of my kids got married. And it's called When You Come to Love. When you come to love, bring all you have. Bring the milk in the jug, the checked cloth on the table, the conch that sang the sea when you were small. And your moonstone rings, you dream of wolves, your woven bracelets. For the key to love is in the fire's nest, and the riddle of love is the hawk's dropped feather. Bring every bowl and ewer, every cup and chalice, jar, for love will fill them all. And dazzled with the day, fold the sunlight in your sheets, fold the smell of salt and leaves, of summer, sweat and roses, to shake them out when you need them most, for love is strong as death. So
Wow.
thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I think it's such a privilege to have poets read their own verses, because this is really the blood within the poetry, the blood within perhaps the lymph within a tree. Tiziano. And so, and first of all, let me apologize because I didn't say thank you to the ones that are really organizing and making this encounter possible. And so Versopolis, Belletrina, and the Cinemambiente Festival, the Environmental Film Festival of Turin. So that make the Festival of Hope possible. And of course, the European Union, which is, I think, that also an important sponsor for this event. And so really to listen to Anne reading and breathing, and also giving us her story of life, her life story, her geography, as it is really embodied in her, is really fantastic. And I think that every of our poets today has something similar to give us. And so therefore, I don't want to take much time, and I want immediately to give the word to Tiziano. I'm following a very neutral alphabetical order. Anyway, but anyway, Tiziano, please.
Okay.
I have also to acknowledge that Tiziano is the real organizer of this panel. So his soul has a big influence on this conversation. So thank you, Tiziano. Very special thanks to you.
Thanks to you. Thanks to all people is following this event, and obviously to the organizers, Festival of Hope, first of all, because it's an occasion for us to put together, to mix together our roots. I'm sorry for my English, because my English really is very poor. So it will be not so interesting and so fluid like the other poets and Serenella. But I try to.
It's a poetic English, Tiziano.
Oh, yes.
Perfectly
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So in my case, the forest appear in different moments of my life. My father was il falegname, come si dice? Carpenter.
Okay.
Was a carpenter, so for us, the blood of the trees are something at the beginning not so respected, not so much, because as carpenter has to work with trees in a way that is very far from what we feel probably correct for us now. And but it was interesting for me to grow up in this situation, because my father was like lots of other Italians of his generation, a person who made with the hands, who create every day his life, not using the brain, the intellect, as we can do as writers or professors, or I don't know. But he was using every day his hands to create something that is very simple but useful. And in this way, he carried me a lot of time in woods, in Italian woods, obviously, to seek for a lot of things. And this was my first contact with the woods, with the forest, because I think that sometimes I feel myself more happy there in the forest than in other social occasions. And after, when I grew up, when I was 20 and 30 years old, I find that this condition is an interesting condition for myself. So I prefer, probably again today, to pass my time meditating in the woods, in the forest, respect to go in other situations. Not because I don't like the persons. Serenella know that I'm quite spiritus. Non so se dice, come si dice spiritoso?
Funny. Funny and
Okay.
sociable.
Simple. Funny. Okay, but funny, not in this moment, but in other situations, I can.
You're
I
amazing,
can.
Tiziano. You are a very, very pleasurable person to spend time with. So
Thank you. Thank you. But so I prefer the woods and the forest and the language of this place is not because I am against the humanity. No, this is not the condition, but because it's a place where I can manage my time and my spirit in a way that I find more deep respect the other situations. And this is also important for what is the rest of my life, because I coined some words, little words. One of these is dendrosophy. Dendron, as you know, are the trees. Dendrosophy is a sort of connection between philosophy, between botanical studies, between poetry and meditation. All things, all the activities and the ideas that put together the man, the humans, and in trees and forests and the woods. And in this sort of little thin word, this dendrosophy, I find to find the roots for my writing. So the publishers have published many books of mine, probably too much books, but some in lines, in verses, some poetry books, and others are travelogues, are collections of meditations, are novels, etc. Different things. And so I have selected 3 poems by 3 completely different poets to try to express, I don't know, my gratitude to the immense world of poetry that we have the opportunity to know, because we have at least 3,000 years of history behind us. No, our roots are very deep today. And one of these poets is Dylan Thomas, a classic in the contemporary age. Another is a poet that in America, I know she's very, very famous, Mary Oliver. But in Italy, we don't know quite nothing in Italy about Mary Oliver, because unluckily we don't have an anthology, a translation published by her poems. But I have different collections of her, also this. Okay, Mary Oliver. This is a book that I suggest to take. It's called Devotions. Is the anthology of the poems by Mary Oliver, and I find her an extraordinary poet. Probably she was fit for the Nobel Prize, but we know how these things sometimes happens or not. And but America is happy because in this last year it deserved the Nobel Prize for Louis Gluck. Gluck. How it sounds. The name is Gluck or Glick?
I think Gluck.
Louise, the Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
Louis Gluck.
Gluck. Okay, thank you. Okay, and another poem is instead of one of my patriarchs in Zen tradition, a Chinese poet lived 8 centuries ago, Shivu, or stone house. That is the name that we give him using your language, the English. Okay. But I can read also the last two poems, because the famous Vision and Prayer by Dylan Thomas, you remember? No, this marvelous shape, and it's very interesting poems, but I prefer to spend more time on the other two that are more linked to the theme, roots and forest that we are talking about. This poem is titled Sleeping in the Forest, so it's perfect for us. It's taken from the collection 12 Moons. I thought the earth remembered me. She took me back so tenderly, arranging her dark skirts, her pockets full of lichens and seeds. I slept as never before, a stone on the riverbed, nothing between me and the white fire of the stars, but my thoughts, and they floated, light as moths among the branches of the perfect trees. All night I heard the small kingdoms breathing around me, the insects and the birds who do their work in the darkness. All night I rose and fell, as if in water, grappling with a luminous doom. By morning I had vanished at least a dozen times into something better. And this is the poem by Miss Mary Oliver. The other poem is written by this monk and hermit from China, Shivu. He was born in the 1272, and so many times ago for us, respect us, okay. And the translation I'm reading is from Red Pine, Bill Porter, that is an important, famous monk, practicer, Zen practicer, and translator of lots of Chinese great and important ancient poets. This Shivu is famous also because when he died, some of his friends go in the forest, in the mountain where he was living, to copy the poems he has written on the stones, on the barks of the trees. So it's a curious story. 40-some years I have lived in the mountains, ignorant of the world's rise and fall, warmed at night by a stove full of pine needles, satisfied at noon by a bowl of white plains, sitting on rocks, watching clouds and empty thoughts, patching my robe in sunlight, practicing silence, till someone asks why Bodhidharma came east, and I hang out my wash. This is okay. For what concerns my poetry, I have selected also in this case 2 poems, translated, I hope, well in your language, not by me because it's okay, but by a dear friend that she is a translator, Eleonora. And this first poem is titled Wandering Forest. Silva itinerans in Latin, because sometimes I use the Latin for the title of the poems. The forest living inside me, a song and endless silence, streams flowing and animals that run. I don't know who I am, the voice is repeating. I don't know who I am. Yet I feel there is this world of fine weaving, living in a place without any border, here in my chest, in my heart, in my mind. It settles in my hours of sleep and fits my hours of thought. This is why when I go back to a real forest, I feel like I want to scream, to love as a mother who doesn't discern a son from another son would so. I am a forest who walks, a forest who roots in and roots out. And this is the last one, worship of the instant. I apologize to the blade of grass, and I apologize to the nightingale flapping its wings in its cage, and I apologize to the runlet whose course I diverted, and I apologize to the sea I polluted. I also apologize to the forest I burned and cut. I apologize to the air struggling to penetrate my lungs. I apologize to the lakes I have exhausted. I apologize to you, word of mine, I contaminated with my poisonous words. I know you, nature. My apologies don't interest you. You feel, create, and reason in your way. There is no need to ask forgiveness for the life suppressed, the felled tree, the caught fish, or the burned out star. But what can I do then, when breath that I am, on this piece of land, if not to feed and to seek for shelter? In spite of me, I apologize, I can't live like a wolf by stolen bites and under a bare sky. I apologize since my crossing claims sacrifice and pain.
Thank you, Tiziano.
Thanks to you.
Thank you. And I see that
Thanks
devotion is exactly the key word here, because there is so much, let's put it this way, I don't like the word, but there is so much spirit in this nature of yours, of your poems. And when you say that your father was having this conversation with the wood in a different way, using his hands, we also understand that the conversation was mutual, because of course trees and forests think, to quote the title of a famous book by an anthropologist, Eduardo Con, how forests think. They think through their signs that they exchange, through the dreams of the natives that are in a conversation with them, but they are also thinking in the encounter with someone who touches them. And your father was touching them with his wisdom, and you have found another way to touch them, also using past voices to encounter the silences of the woods. And this is a form of devotion, and I think it's so important. And at this point, my silence just turns to Juan Carlos, and I really invite him, because I think that there could not be a better connection between this eloquent matter that you honor in your poems and what Juan Carlos does. Please. Thank you, Tiziano. Your English is
Thanks to
fantastic.
you.
Juan Carlos,
Please.
I unmute you. No, I cannot unmute you. You have to unmute yourself. Oh, right.
Thank you.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you, Serenella, and all your friends in Italy and other places in the world that have made this possible. And I really feel I really feel very honored to be here with you, philosopher, poet, and with Anne, um, talking about place, talking about because that's what that I perceive in the poem, that I feel from Anne. You know, her poetry is it's about the places uh, that had formed her life, her poetry, and now Mississippi also, and the same with you, Tiziano, whose poetry it's it's the result of being inhabited by the land, more specifically trees, right? So Anne's poetry, is as a result of the earth felt through the body, and that end up in words to communicate, across uh, languages and across the world. So it's very really very unique, very unique. I've never been to a festival of poetry like this that puts together so much, in a very succinct manner. So I don't know how much time, but and I was so enamored with your sharing other poets, William Carlos Williams, a big influence in my life. When I came to this country, I met a person who has been a friend of William Carlos Williams, the late Guy Davenport. He has been the friend of Williams and of Ezra Pound. I mean, he wrote his doctoral dissertation on Ezra Pound, and he shared with me a lot of his correspondence with Williams. And I tried to translate some of Williams' poems, but my translation was so horrible that I got discouraged immediately, because I read some beautiful translations of Octavio Paz. But here it is. This is a book of poems, my first book of poetry that I published in my 20s. And I quote that line from Esfodelo. En Spanish es difícil sacar noticias de un poema, pero los hombres todos los días mueren miserablemente por no tener aquello que tienen los poemas. That is a quote that opened my book, my first book of poems in my 20s. I haven't written that many books, actually, but it's that, say, you will not find, it says, it is difficult to get the news from poems, yet men die miserably every day for lack of what is found there. Yeah, that was my quote in Espanol, what I just read. So you can't speak more directly to me by opening this and than using that quote. But anyway, so I want to share a couple of poets very important to me. One is Jose Emilio Pacheco, and the other one is Nicanor Parra. A very, both of them very important poets in our literary tradition in Latin America. And so I and there are pretty much eco poetry to me. One of them is pretty direct by Parra. He says, "Good news, the earth recovers in 1,000,000 years. We are the ones who disappear." So very succinct, very succinct. Not much to say about it. Sort of like I told you, kind of thing. That warning and words of wisdom. And another one by Jose Emilio Pacheco, also very succinct. It's called Fish. That's the title. It says, "For the net, for the harpoon, you were born. For the hook, suffocation, and skillet. We ruined your sea through usury. Now you do yourself justice by poisoning us." And it's pretty interesting that when I read that poem this time, I was honored to meet Jose Emilio Pacheco many years ago, and I can see so many communication, so many dialogues with the tradition, in this poetry, and poets from our tradition and international tradition like Ezra Pound that perhaps many of you are thinking about the poem Contra la Usura, against usury. Ezra Pound is one of the cantos, one of the famous
Yes.
cantos of Ezra Pound, and I see Pacheco echoing that, so anyway, and the next poem by Pacheco is High Treason. he takes all this terminology from law and martial law and those kind of things, and flip it around for us here beautifully. High Treason. I don't love my homeland. Its abstract gleam is ungraspable. But even though it sounds bad, I would give my life for 10 of its places, certain people, ports, pine forests, fortresses, a decaying city, gray monstrous, a few historical figures, mountains, and 3 or 4 rivers. Uh, that, to me, that's a very powerful poem in the sense that it brings connect us to roots, connect us to place, in our adventure, humankind, we go out with our imagination and enact some of our imagination, like thinking about, well, we're gonna move out from here pretty soon. We just go to the moon. We have heard all these narratives throughout our past century, right? No, we're gonna conquer those other places when really we need to think about here. We need to look into the earth and find a lot of answers and a lot of teachings. And so your poetry and Tiziano cannot speak more clearly to me of that sense. That was coined by the eco-criticism as a sense of place, right? I mean, this is a general term, but isn't that what it's all about? I mean, so I haven't written that much, like 4 books of poetry or something like that, and what happens is a lot of reprints, and it seems like I've written a lot of books of poetry, but it's not. But so the selection of poems from my book Amazonia and Yakumam and Other Mythical Beings, I choose some poems that I want to share here. The first one. I think I skipped talking about the fact that yes, I was born in the Colombian Amazon, and by chance, My parents were from the Andes, but there was a civil war in the country that made them to push people away to save their lives. And so by chance I was born there, and I grew up among indigenous people, and I think that all my learningship for my poetry, my locus, my poetic locus, um, emerged from that place, and in dialogues and intersections with you know, modernity and the things that we that become our lives, that become the fabric of our lives, that through our years, that we move to places and we encounter other literary traditions, and that give us so much, and challenge us to, in order to talk about our places, and to talk about others. Yeah, because through our lives we find these extraordinary poets, and I'm talking about the world traditions. Not only my literary tradition, Spanish tradition, but and those poets challenge us. And you have to say, well, Mr. Such and Such, I love the way you talk about uh, your world, and it's so admirable and all that. Uh, that that pushes me to challenge me to uh, to imagine a way to tell the story of my place, to tell the story of others, uh, that I came to love throughout my life, and that are uh, uh, the my words are made out of every single experience uh, and that I had, and with that matter, and how that matter, to use the poetic construct of Serenella, philosophical poetic construct, uh, you know, uh, pushes me, uh, it infuse me, instill imagination in me, uh, to keep moving, to be part of that chain of dynamic processes of life, uh, uh, that we are part of it, for the brief moment we are here, right? That kind of that's more or less, vehicles of that matter to tell the story, and nothing to do with my experience throughout life. 25 years ago, I was lucky that I went back to the entire Amazon basin, and I traveled and listening to the stories of people that are very close to the land, fishermen, loggers, hunters, shamans, in many places of the basin, in all the countries that share the basin, And so that also challenged me to come up with a way to talk about that. So all these stories, yeah, they are connected somehow, somewhat, to my personal life, but I see them as the stories of place, pretty much. So we can start with one called Muchacha Girl. I I send it the two versions, for in case that says some people were um, uh, able to read them in Spanish, but I understand we use the only lingua that we're using here is the English as a lingua franca, and we all uh, manage. so, um, so girl, a girl who bathes in a river ends up falling in love with the river. Her parents would like her to wed an automobile. Better find her another husband. Get her away from that river. This affair with the river could make others in the universe uncomfortable, some say. The wind and other famous personalities are upset. They go on the radio and are seen on television. The son who comes to greet the girl every morning with a crate of manioc roots is upset. The cloud who tries to slip through her window to take her far away is furious. But the girl disappears. Nobody knows to where in the arms of a river. So that was one. That was uh, uh, the next poem is Game. The sister and brother, mountain and sea, play tug of war with the river that joins them. One day, the sea jerks on the mountain, and the mountain turns over, spilling her cauldron of lava over the land, houses, and people. But when the sea least expects it, the mountain pours at the river, and the sea drowns hundreds of animals and fishermen who live on the shore. Worst of all, the biggest river allows this foolishness, says an old woman. The people beg the universe and the stars to teach this pair of scoundrels some manners. The universe and stars say they don't want to meddle in family affairs. And then there is a sequel that I wrote to that poem. It said, those who believe the river was a tug of rope, uh, uh, a tug rope were wrong. Those who believe the river was a tug rope were wrong. The river is a thin vein on the earth's face, a delicate stream that could break and put out the stars. Uh, the universe tells those who play with the river. The river is a string all the animals and trees cling to. If they pull too hard, the river could burst. It could burst and wash our faces with water and blood. Uh, I was honored that that was the poem that the Pope Francis quoted in his
I was going to
his
say
late.
that Juan Carlos is really fantastic. In fact, so now in the final minutes of our reading and conversation, yeah, we have to emphasize the fact that this is something which interests those who really care for for the planet and for
Uh,
for for the for the health of all beings that live and dwell with us on this planet. And in fact, your final poem, if I might interlope in this conversation now, is exactly the answer to what Tiziano was saying about his father, and so and about the heart and the art of dealing with wooden matter, which is not only a pure inert matter, but it's maternal as well.
that's
So, so if you can read this last poet, and then we try to wrap up this fantastic conversation, which should be unfinished. I think it's, I mean,
yeah.
we really have so many things to share, and we are sharing a lot. So, but Mesa is, as you know, is one of my favorite poems of yours. So I know I take it as a personal gift.
Yes, I certainly dedicate this to you, Serenella. That you really know this that poem really it was amazing. Yeah, it just brought me. Yeah. By the way, I mean the reason it's I ended up writing this poem is because table is the place where the family sits. I mean, and if there is something that we remember in life, is that table,
Yeah.
those tables when that we were with our families from at the very beginning. of our lives. And yeah, so table. The table often dreams of having been an animal. But if she had been an animal, she wouldn't be a table. If she had been an animal, she would have ran away like the others when the chainsaw came to take the trees that would become tables. In the house, a woman comes every night and rubs a warm rag over the table's haunches as if she were an animal. With her four legs, the table could leave the house, but she thinks about the chairs surrounding her, and an animal would not abandon her family. What the table likes best is for the woman to tickle her as she gathers the breadcrumbs left behind by the children. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, really. And this tells us how uncertain and blurred are the boundaries between nature's realms, vegetable, animal, mineral. So Tiziano's poems are very eloquent about this,
Yes.
and also puts into the conversation objects and beings that just cross our paths and become part of our imagination only for an instant, and only for an instant we become part of the imagination of reality. That's what we are, dreams of something that materialize into now. So and I think that you, the three of you, really shape a fantastic ensemble of voices and silences, because you have this fantastic capability to listen to the silence of things and transform these silences into thoughts, not simply words, but thoughts and devotions,
Mhm.
because there is always something sacred about poetry. We should never forget that. If there is sacred in this world, this sacred is a poetic sacredness. And I'm a layperson. I'm not the quintessential religious person. So, but I believe in the sacredness of poetry. And this is the only reason why I don't agree with the poet that says that all humans okay, the earth recovers, Nicanor Parra, the earth recovers in 1,000,000 years. We are the ones who disappear. I think that we also deserve to be mourned when we will disappear,
Right.
because we are capable of poetry, of enjoying this, of words, of friendship.
Yeah.
Poetry is a form of friendship, and we have to dedicate our devotion to that. And this is my final word. So I leave to you, to the three of you, so this last minute just to say goodbye to one another, and to thank this magnificent hospitality, to thank the audience, and thank everybody who made it possible. So let's start with Anne, Tiziano, and finally Juan Carlos for the last 5 minutes of wrapping up this fantastic conversation.
Well, I thought it was amazing. It was really a pleasure to hear all of you. And Serenelli, you speak so well about everybody, just, improvising like at the moment. I was really impressed with that. So it's a real pleasure. I feel very lucky to have been part of this. And thank you very much for including me. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne. Tiziano.
See, thanks to you. Is this is an instrument so not so easy to create connections, because every one of us is talking in his room, no, in his or room, and we are separated from a long distance of space and time also. So it's not easy to mix together, but I hope that this is the first occasion for us to create a sort of dialogue in different times. And I hope also that this could be an interesting event for the festival, because the Festival of Hope is above all a festival of young poets. We are all youngs, but probably in another way, not in the same way from that we were 20s, for example. And And so, and the theme that the items that we selected for this meeting are in reality huge. So we touch only the surface, obviously, of the themes, of the complexity of the situations. When Carlos talked about, for example, the Amazonia, that obviously is a huge word that is not easy to represent in some words or in some in this hour of connection, and also all the description, all the places that represent, paint in her poems and in his way to describe her life. So thank you to you, thanks to the people that follow this event, and thanks you to Serenella, because she's so lovely every time. Thank you.
Oh, well, I cannot help quoting Italo Calvino, who says that the surface of things is inexhaustible. La superficie delle cose è inesauribile. So we welcome the surface, because everything comes to surface sooner or later. And this is the epiphany of things, right? So we really welcome every single chance we have to deal with something which just rises up from wherever. Juan Carlos, give us your final word and bless us with your poem, your poetry.
I can't be more thankful that this opportunity to be that in this dialogue, to join the dialogue that Anne and you, Tiziano, as prompt. It's we're in this dialogue with each other, with the earth, and everything is in that surface, as Serenella said, and again I love the name of the festival.
Yeah, definitely. We need it.
It is as if it's that pain that we have, the pain of the earth that the earth has, that always had as part of the processes of the universe, all these dynamics, that at the same time it's able to produce a sense of wonder about and it speaks through us as by creating creating beauty, but beauty, a sense of wonder about everything, about our lives, about the lives of the earth, and our life together. It's really a hopeful thing.
Yeah,
it's a hopeful thing.
Yes.
And with everything on it, with pain and joy and sense of wonder and the pleasure of sharing beauty.
Yeah.
Which is what I think that we try to do in any form of life, of expression, so anyway, I don't know what else to say.
Thank you, really. Thank you, Juan Carlos. I mean, every conversation is a form of hope and it's a form of friendship. So we really thank everybody for being here, for being our friends, and for sharing this hope with us, that everybody can find their voices in the silence of poetry, right? So thank you, everybody. And I don't know whether our Gaetano wants to add anything, and so but otherwise I wish you well.
Thank you, Tiziano and Anne. Yeah.
Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Thanks to you.
And so have a good life in 2021, which is fortunately not 2020, right?
Bye-bye. Thanks so much.
Thank you
Bye.
so very much.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye.
Everyone. Ciao. 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 Ciao.
Ok, ciao.
Ciao, thank you so
Ciao,
much.
ciao.
Bye bye.
Voi vedete la chat? Sì, Tiziano, vedi la chat, no? C'è
Sì, è che non riesco a usarla bene, ma la vedo. Sono un po'
molto-
impedito, in effetti. Che volevo rispondere a questa Anne Murray, però non riesco a
Sono
farlo.
collegata qua, se vuoi rispondergli dal vivo, è ancora collegata.
Ok, Anne, are you?
Yeah.
How to disengage.
Hi.
Ok.
They're reading your message on the chat.
Yes, I wasn't sure because I didn't know if I was supposed to be visible. So I didn't know if you would have questions. So I'm also doing something in the festival, this ekphrastic fantastic. And there's been a lot of artists that I've been involved with something called Becoming Tree. And I think it would be very nice for these artists to be in touch with you.
Oh, yeah.
Especially, I like very much this idea of dendrosophy. And,
Thank you.
you know, these are artists who, some of them, you know, they're working on their PhDs, they're doing other research and relating, and perhaps it would be nice to put them in contact. And so I don't know if there's some way I can contact you, if there's an email or something I can perhaps write to you a little bit more, not to take your time now. Maybe you're tired from talking, but I can give you my email. I'll write it here in the chat. I'm the curator of this other project called Cloud9 Pavilion, and through Cloud9 Pavilion, we made this ekphrastic fantastic that's every day. We have something.
For the title, this is a dream. I apologize for not facilitating questions. I saw that we just went beyond the hour that was allotted to us. And so, but it's nice that you can you were able to ask this question to Tiziano and Juan Carlos, who is fantastically here again. And so
I don't know.
Well-
I can you hear me? Can you hear
yeah,
me?
we can.
Oh, because I don't know how to. I'm pretty bad with technology, and I don't know. I can't see Renella.
Okay, Juan Carlos, if you want to stay, you're welcome to say. We're going to say everybody's goodbye, but just this is just a moment of saying goodbye.
Can you invite
Goodbye.
Juan Carlos in, for the Ghiande di Cinemambiente in Italy?
Yeah, that was the idea, as a matter of fact. So
Yes.
that would be
Yes,
fantastic.
A literary prize in we are a festival, film festival, but Tiziano organized a literary prize, competition
Yes.
in October, the first week of October, and maybe you can come in Italy. We can invite you in October if it's possible to travel.
Okay. Referring to me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that would be so. I'll be honored.
With Serenella, with Serenella.
Oh, that would be
Oh,
really
that
fun.
would
That
be
would be such a privilege.
Only with Serenella.
Accompanied by me, escorted by me.
I have been so
I want to say that I'm the record. Taglia questo pezzo.
You told.
L'inglese è terribile.
Ascolta.
I have very few friends. I have very,
Taglia
very
questo
few
pezzo.
friends. Let me say something. I have very few friends in throughout my life, but you know they happen to be the best people of the world. Not only in Amazonia but in other places. Very few friends, and I think Serenella as one of the best people I ever met, and not only her very profound and poetic way of thinking. That's very unique. That's very unique.
Juan Carlos, you really have a big affection
And
for
now,
me.
and now you're
Thank you.
introducing to the poetry of Tiziano. That I think that you and I have a lot to talk.
Yeah,
Tiziano.
well,
We
I
are
was just
sure.
thinking that I mean, with Tiziano, with Gaetano, Juan Carlos would be, I mean, that would be such an interesting conversation, and
Very
we have
nice
to make
meet
it
you,
happen.
Gaetano. I would love to communicate with you. Yeah.
And
Thank you.
Gaetano, let me add that there is
a
a movie, there is a documentary film which has been shot. I don't know whether Marcos Colon has finished with his documentary about you.
He's working on that. In fact, he got a drive yesterday from me that I have brought from the Amazon because he needed some materials from
a
me.
Brazilian scholar, film scholar, is creating a documentary on Juan Carlos, which promises to be very good. And perhaps we can bring it to Cinemambiente. That would be nice.
Please share the movie. I want to. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Guys.
Okay.
And Tiziano, and what a wonderful event was this. Okay.
Thanks to you. Thanks to
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Ciao. So
Ciao.
if the Italian may stay for a moment, we can say hello, goodbye in Italian for a moment. And so thank you so much.
Yeah.
And we'll talk again, Juan Carlos, very soon.
Okay.
Talk about pizza.
There is a red button at the lower the right corner of the screen.
This thing right. Oh, at the right corner. Hold on a second. I'm gonna make this. I'm just gonna shut the computer. I'm sorry. Okay.
Ciao, Juan
Ciao.
Carlos. Thank you
Ciao,
so
ciao,
much.
ciao, ciao, ciao.
Tolgo la registrazione.